So as you know, today is Palm Sunday, and the focus of Palm Sunday is, historically on the return of Jesus to Jerusalem, just as his ministry was kind of winding down toward the crucifixion and the resurrection. And I like to say that it wasn't really winding down, it was more spiraling up to a big splash, his spiritual climax of moving toward and through that experience into the resurrection. And so Jesus, as you know, during the course of his ministry, entered a lot of cities, a lot of different towns, created a much stir, but no bigger stir than occurred on that special day when he made his triumphal entry into Jerusalem. And the event marks the beginning of Holy Week, and it's an important time. It is a happening that carries with it holy and sacred ramifications as it relates to you and me. It's recorded in all four Gospels. Remember, Jerusalem was the spiritual capital. So it was the spiritual hub, the spiritual center of that day. And it's important for us to remember that the various stories and accounts that we find in the Bible are really not just historical accounts alone, but that there is an outer literal meaning to many of the things that we read there, but that there also is an inner meaning that we must be sensitive to. Inner meaning in the sense that are some metaphysics there. There's some symbology, and metaphysics being beyond the physical, beyond the literal. And so we have to be sensitive to that. And many aspects of the Holy Week and stories and happenings, are intricately woven to convey what it is that goes on in order to have a resurrection experience within us. There's a process, if you will. One of the teachings that is embedded in the resurrection story is that there is no death. That death is really an illusion, that it's not what it appears to be. And Jesus faced every kind of fear that man could face, and faced it head on to demonstrate that fear is not of God, it's only love. And so that was one dimension, certainly a big one, of the resurrection, and more will come with that with Easter. But in addition to that, it is also, this resurrection is a teaching about the resurrection of the Christ in you, the divine in you, the divinity in you, a resurrecting of higher states of being in you that have lain dormant for whoever knows how long in one's life. And so that involves a process. There's a process, an internal process or preparation that opens the way to rising up into higher states of consciousness, higher states where the true nature of peace and love and joy are inherently felt, where we can live from those energies. That's who we really are. That is our nature. Now, we said that Jerusalem was a spiritual center, and it's good to know that symbolically, Jerusalem lives in you. There's a spiritual center in you. That's how we think in terms of symbolically we read these stories. And so heading into Jerusalem is the Christ, the true nature of you, is going to the center. And the temple in Jerusalem is you. Okay? We're told in Scripture, you are the temple of the living God. And so to know that. And as some of you know, I've attended the Oneness University in India about 4 times in the last 5 years, and what I've shared is that their teachings are very similar and compatible with ours. They have great respect and reverence for the teachings of Jesus Christ, and they present what one would call universal teachings that are related to, the one God that we all embrace, and that is the source of us all. And they say that essentially spirituality can be summed up in 2 words, and that is love and forgiveness. That ultimately, that's what we're here to learn. You learn those things, you will basically open up to new dimensions. Now, one of the things that they emphasize is the importance of having passion. Passion. And it's having a passion for spiritual awakening. The passion to connect with the divine, the passion to deepen in your relationship with the divine. And most people live from, oftentimes, desire. Desire is the distinction there. The desire, their motive, oftentimes, to move closer to God comes as a result of a crisis or situation that they're being faced with. And so then they really move toward God in that problem or situation. and they want to be free of it. And their desire is to be free of whatever the problem is relative to a serious crisis in their relationships, in their finances, in their health, whatever. But passion, to know and experience oneness with God, isn't driven by any kind of motive like that. It's simply driven by an absolute, sincere, authentic hunger and thirst to know and be one with that the dimension of your being that is the divine, to experience the love and the oneness in relationship with God. And it's not wrong, of course, to ask and have the desire for help from God as you go through relationship challenges, finance challenges, health challenges, and all of that. But it's not meant to begin and end there, really. You know, for many, when people are free of their problems, free of their crisis, I've watched them all of a sudden begin to retreat, fade away, and weaken in their commitment to that path that has gotten them into a place of a greater awakening. And so only the divine can help us really develop this passion. We have to realize that in every instance where we want to further ourselves and advance, we have to incorporate our relationship with the divine. It becomes a very personal kind of an experience. We ask and invite the divine in any area of help. So if you want to grow spiritually, you want to awaken spiritually, you want to deepen in your passion, you have to ask. Simply ask the divine, because you cannot do it on your own. Another teaching that was emphasized at our Oneness University in India is the idea that we all have charges. And these charges, are nothing new. People have heard of charges before, but if you're not aware, charges are simply referring to those times where we have been hurt or we've been wounded. And we've been wounded emotionally. And we've buried these hurts, and we've buried these wounds in our unconscious. So we may not even be aware of it, but we're at the effect of them. And we run from the hurt, we run from the feelings. We don't want to feel them, and so they go deeper, they get bigger. And we have made decisions, and we've concluded things about ourselves and about life and what have you. They're not accurate, and they need to be healed. They need to be corrected. They need to be brought to the truth. They need to be, things need to be forgiven, or things that need to be released and let go. And so these changes can be, these charges can actually originate anywhere from experiences that we had in our birth experience to as a babe, as a child, growing up, our youth, various parts of our adulthood. It can be something that happened even last week, last month, last year, years ago, or as they say, in a past lifetime. And so these changes can be, these charges. Releasing the charges lead to changes, but these charges can be, relative to our parents, a sibling, a spouse, a friend that went amok, that went awry, friendship, most anyone or anything or all of the above. And, because we've not wanted to look at these things and these charges, they're buried in our unconscious, and we are, greatly at the effect of them. They are not constructive at all. They rob us, really, of the peace and the love and the joy that we're intended to have. They actually are the things unconsciously that stand in the way of between us and our divine. That even we're sometimes feels like we can't connect with the divine because of all these charges that are actually kind of standing in the way. So we have to, again, ask the divine to help, in these things, to help us move through the charges that are buried in our past. And only with the help of the divine are we able to actually see what these things are, the images to come up, the experiences take us through, feel the feelings, and they begin to wither away. And we become free of them. Once you feel your way through the charge and the feeling that you've run from, it is discharged, okay? And the mind tries to hang on to our problems, but the divine is there to kind of discharge it. And so again, we have to pray, ask for the help. Now, another important thing that is taught, which we teach obviously, but again, there's that compatibility, is the emphasis upon humility. And, one of the things they teach at the Oneness University is that all learning is unlearning. That a lot of the things that we need have to do with letting go of things. And what remains then is really the truth. That we've covered over who we really are, we've covered over much of the truth, and we have to peel that away, which means to kind of unlearn a lot of that. That has to do to some extent with the charges, things that we've decided, things that we've arrived at, things that we've concluded. They're not accurate, but they're unconscious because we don't want to face them, we don't want to look at them. And so that's part of the deal, and that's part of where the divine enters in to help. But we're talking about humility right now. And unlearning, as we're saying, can only happen really where there is flexibility and a person is flexible. Most people are caught up in rigidity of thoughts, ideas, and beliefs. And as long as you think that then you tend to make your concepts and ideas that you've held to very, very rigid. You hang on to them. You don't want to let go of them. And so for some people, that's their protection of sorts. Don't shake what I believe. Don't shake what my opinions are, my ideas. Lack of flexibility, however, is a lack of humility. And unless a person's able to accept for themselves the idea, I don't know. I don't know everything. There's something here I could learn. If we don't get to that place, he or she is really lacking in humility. Because everything has something to offer. Everything. And when we lack humility, we aren't able to open up and receive and accept what it is that is there to be given. We may even push it away, may even condemn it, we may make light of it, whatever. And so sometimes in our lack of humility, we become positional, we become arrogant, we become sometimes opinionated, very strong. And sometimes because we don't understand something, because it's different, because it's something that we're not familiar with, we haven't experienced or whatever, we just don't really know, and it's unusual or unique, then we become afraid. We're afraid to admit we don't know, or we just are afraid of it. On an unconscious level, we may even be afraid of what we don't know. And we mask our fears by simply, condemning it, diminishing its credibility, rigidly standing in a position of skepticism, what have you. So everything has something to offer, even those things that we don't understand or we lack an understanding of. So the divine can help us. The divine can always help us. We have to ask the divine to reveal to you, to me, help see where we lack humility. That's an important part of spiritual awakening. Just prayerfully ask the divine, and the divine will show you. It's always there to help you. It is meant to be your friend. That's all about relationship. Very, very powerful. Everything has something to offer. And so ask the divine. And so all of this that we're talking about, how does that relate to Palm Sunday? Well, it actually does, because many of these things took place on Holy Week. All of these various happenings that we will just step into a little bit were a part of a process. And there's a process of preparation. And this process of preparation always precedes any kind of a triumph, any kind of a resurrection, any kind of a rising up into a more awakened state that translates into new energies that you're living from, that are not stressful, not afraid, not separate, but you're more one with who you really are. And so in any spiritual thrust upward or deeper into awakening, there is also always a process of preparation that precedes it. And so we're talking about preparing really the way for God to enter into our life in a bigger way, the divine to move in ways that are very powerful. Now, the Bible talks in numerous times about the idea of preparation, actually. There's one passage in 1 Samuel where it states, "Prepare your hearts to the Lord." Prepare your hearts to the Lord. Very powerful thing. Have we prepared our hearts? Have we opened ourselves to feel, a connection? In Isaiah chapter 40, verse 3, you find that famous verse, or often referred to verse, "Prepare ye the way of the Lord." Okay, so there's some preparation here. Even that was pulled out, and you find that line in the early going of the first three Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. As an example, in Matthew 3:3, it states, "Prepare ye the way of the Lord, make his paths straight." And so in Holy Week, or any other time really, if you're wanting to move toward a resurrection or higher states, you have to prepare ye the way. You have to do some preparation. It's part of the process. That's what you're called on to be doing. And so we're now in the final week of preparing an opening to the Easter triumph that is to take place in each one of us, a kind of a spiritual God uprising, if you will. So this is the time to move out of some of our charges that have resulted in an ongoing sense of sadness that we don't know why we're in it, stresses that don't need to be there but linger on, angers, resentments, irritabilities, unhappinesses. These are often a product, and we may not even know why, because it's really under the surface of some of these charges. And so on what we now call Palm Sunday, Jesus made his journey into Jerusalem, and we said it created quite a stir. And there are these number of events that took place that I want to allude to that are actually symbolic of a process that precedes a shift or a change. You may recall that Jesus went to great lengths to be sure that he had a young donkey to ride into the city on. That instead of a big white war horse where he would come in showing force and wanting to claim himself a king. There were those that wanted that, but he came in and made a big statement, went to great lengths to do that, and that was all about the point of humility. He wanted to, again, stress the importance. When you approach or enter your Jerusalem, when you approach your spiritual center, your spiritual hub, your spiritual essence, you have to do it with humility and a sense of reverence. And that will bring in the energies of the divine all the more. After a big entry in Jerusalem, Jesus and his disciples, they returned to Bethany. And Bethany is a little town that is about 4 miles outside of Jerusalem. And so that's where they were housed each day during Holy Week, and they would walk the 4 miles in from Bethany to Jerusalem. So on Monday morning, as Jesus and his companions set out for Jerusalem after having made the grand entry the day before, it's Monday, they're heading in, and Jesus was hungry. And so in Matthew 21, you can read where he sees this fig tree by the wayside. He went to it. He found nothing on it but leaves. And he said to it, "May no fruit ever come from you again." And the fig tree withered at once, it says. So I asked the question, what can we learn from that except for, the thought that, geez, when Jesus is hungry, he really is irritable. That's obviously not the point. The story is there, I would advocate, because it relates to a process of preparation. It's still part of this process of moving towards a resurrection, a changing to higher states. We could say that this is really talking about charges, or referring in some way to charges. Because when we observe or witness something in our life, states of mind or a happening or whatever, that are not constructive, are not fruitful, are not supportive, in no way feed us, but deny us the fruit of the Spirit, by facing this, admitting to it, we can dismiss it, really, in a sense. Becoming aware of it, recognizing it, we can have it just wither away and have it be discharged from our life. Okay, there are things like that. The divine in you knows what it is in your life that will never deliver any fruit of the Spirit. The peace, the joy, the love, it's not going to come from that tree. So dismiss it, discharge it. Okay? And just as we release thoughts and ideas and beliefs that will not carry fruit, we allow those to wither and to die. And so Jesus is still on his way to Jerusalem, having withered this tree, fig tree. And upon reaching the temple, Jesus saw a scene of a lot of confusion. And there are the money changers there who are arguing over foreign coins. And there are people selling, and merchants selling oxen and sheep and doves and all of this going on. And so we know that Jesus cleansed the temple, right? And so we won't go into elaborate, but he did say, "My house shall be called a house of prayer for all the nations, but you have made of it a den of robbers." And so again, we could say that this is symbolically referring to, cleansing our consciousness, our own inner temple, of all the charges that have robbed us of peace and love and joy, and have created a sense of separation from who we are. So before entering any serious undertaking, before we, can resurrect our own life into higher states of consciousness, we have to be willing to cleanse the temple. We have to be willing to, as Jesus referred to it, cleanse not just the outside of the cup, but the inside of the cup. And recognizing that you are the temple of the living God, you have to enter into that process. Now, as Jesus was going through that Holy Week, he taught and shared basically 3 parables. And they're found in Matthew 21 and 22. And the 3 parables are the parable of the 2 sons, parable of the wicked husbandman, and the parable of the wedding feast. I want to just touch on the wedding feast for today. And in it, Jesus says, and again, remember, this is a parable. Jesus made it up so that within the symbology of the ingredients of the story, you would see yourself on your path of spiritual growth and unfoldment. So he says, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a marriage feast. So it's about a feast. It's about marriage. It's about the likeness of the kingdom of heaven, higher states of being in oneness with the divine. Okay? And so he sent his servants to call those who were invited to the marriage feast, but they would not come. So he sent other servants extending invitations. But those who were invited, they made light of it. And they even some of them went off to do their businesses. And even some of them who were invited killed those who had extended the invitation. And the king then tells yet more servants to go out into the thoroughfares, into the streets, and invite those that you find, and gather those good and bad, and fill the wedding hall. So what is that talking about? Well, to me it's fairly obvious. It's really talking about a lack of passion that exists there. God, the King, has prepared a feast, which we are all to be invited to. And the feast is likened to this kingdom of heaven, okay? Love, oneness, higher states, awakening. It is a marriage feast, a marriage to the divine. Some refuse to come. Some make light of it. Some scoff at it. This is nothing. Some go off in to fill their little desires and their businesses and the things, making that secondary, you see. And some even do harm to those who gave them the invitation, attacking their ideas, their thoughts, their beliefs, whatever it is that they were concocting and creating in the way of a feast. An attack. Well, the next part of the parable is about a man who had no wedding garment. And just to conclude that story, when the king came to look at the guests, he saw that there was a man there who had no wedding garment. And he said to him, "Friend," which is interesting. He's a friend, so he isn't condemning. He said, "How did you get in here? You know, not having worn a wedding garment." Usually they have servants standing at the door making sure that anyone who comes into the wedding has prepared themselves, has clothed themselves properly to be at a feast, a wedding feast. And so, you know, literally we could say that they have to wear a particular garment that's clean, or in some commentaries it says a white garment, whatever. But the king asked him, and the guy had no response. He was speechless. And the king then said to have him bound in hand and foot and cast into outer darkness. Now remember, this is a created story. What is that saying? It's saying essentially all of what we've been talking about here. By not entering a process of interpreparedness, by not cleansing the inside of the cup and the temple, not having passion for a relationship with the divine to grow, not being flexible, not being humble, we basically cast ourselves into outer darkness. We become